You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. I'm also sick, but no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show a part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you were well, and I hope that you were looking forward to my conversation with Freddie from The Ugly Inside, a longtime friend of the show, longtime personal friend as well, having really shown me the ropes on an away day. I would have been totally lost without him. Probably would not have been able to get on the tube in time to actually make the game, nor would I have found a ticket. So, Freddie a lot, always good to catch up with him. But this is the most hungover I've ever been doing an episode of the show, and I'll just be really, really honest with you. And you listen to me now, you can tell probably that I'm sick. I know that I'm sick. I was more sick on Sunday morning when I talked to Freddie. I was also more hungover, and I apologize for that. Combination of just sickness and then celebrating the Astros getting into the World Series, which is no small feat. For those of you who don't watch baseball, the World Series is what you try to win every year. It is the thing that your team should be shooting for if your team is good. The Astros, who were bad for most of my life, are pretty good, and we're back. And so hopefully they take it back. That's been their slogan all year, take it back, because they won it 2 years ago, did not win it last year, going to try to win it again this year. So 4 more wins in the season, and they are champions. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about Saints' 1-1 draw with Wolves, which I think any of us would have taken before the game even started. But Freddie and I try to flesh it all out. Freddie keeps me on track quite well. So thank you, Freddie, for, I guess, remotely hosting the show. Hopefully you do not hear the people that I stayed with, the hot tub that people were not using, but it kept turning on to, I don't know, heat up. I guess that's what hot tubs do. Ask the guys at Happy Hot Tubs, but that's not this show. That is the Total Saints podcast. So, ask Ben your questions. I don't know how this stuff works. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy it. And if this is your first ever episode, try again next week. Hopefully you like it. And if you've been around for a while, thanks for your support. We'll talk to you soon. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Freddie from The Ugly Inside. You will recognize his voice, hopefully, as long as it sounds normal, from the YouTube channel and also from the radio and everywhere else. And he's been on this show plenty of times before. But Freddie, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Good to be here. I think you're probably a bit worse for wear than I am, to be honest, today, mate.
You're probably right. I am both sick and I won't lie, I'm very hungover. But we are going to do this. I have 2 cups of coffee, a crap load of water, and I would send you a picture of the recording space, but it may contain illicit materials and therefore will not be displayed publicly.
Well, as they say, we've got to sort of plug away, haven't we? Got to crack on.
That's right. Normally I would try to hide this, but there's no hiding it this time. And I guess I will say I celebrated more than just the point against Wolves, but we'll have to get to all of that. Of course, if people want to follow you, The Ugly Inside on Instagram or Twitter, you're at The Ugly Inside on Twitter and at The Ugly Inside 1988 on Instagram. And of course, the YouTube channel and everything else. There are links to those in the show notes below. But yeah, it's been good to kind of catch up with you a little bit. And I'm looking forward to discussing yesterday's game and kind of all the new things you guys are doing this season with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I guess to get started, the YouTube channel has changed slightly this season. And that you guys went to a more live format. So, I mean, we're a couple of weeks in now. You've had a chance to kind of test this out and figure it out. And how are you finding the live recording in terms of how it's going for the channel and how it's going for you personally?
So we decided to move to sort of live preview shows. A couple of reasons why, to kind of eliminate sort of what the workload, or reduce the workload on my capacity, because I spend almost all of my week producing, filming, editing, uploading towards the preview show on a sort of 2 days before kickoff. So we've moved it to a live show just so that I can reduce my workload, and so it isn't consuming my life, which it has been sort of for the last 18 months since we've been producing these preview shows. And I guess it also allows us to engage with our community a little bit more on YouTube. So it's good in that respect, and we've been sort of using this live streaming sort of web-based alternative to go straight to YouTube, and it's working well so far. We can get our comments up on screen. We can do a split screen. The only thing is that there is no more sort of gimmicks or green screen introductions, because now I don't want to find time for it, to be honest. And there is no sort of cutaways. So if you look back on some of our videos and our previous shows, we tend to talk about things and then I cut away to images or little clips of the previous game. So there's less of that. So it's really sort of just a straightforward kind of chat preview show, and then it will be made available to download as a podcast, so you can consume it in other ways.
And I'll be honest, that's how I get most of them. I enjoy podcasts. Obviously, I do this one, but it is. I find it much easier to listen while I'm driving or doing the dishes or whatever than to sit down and watch a video. I guess, has anybody complained or commented on the lack of cutaways or anything like that? Anybody complaining about that aspect of it, or are people relatively happy with the fact they get to interact with you kind of live on this stuff?
Nobody's actually mentioned anything about sort of the images and cutaways and B-rolls. So to that respect, there's no sort of loss. But we seem to have a regular sort of fans that appear on our chat, on our comments, live feed sort of view every time we run a live show. Hopefully, sort of they've got their notifications sort of turned on and they're subscribed along. And we're getting comments from across the world, not just sort of people from the UK, but we've had comments from people tuning in live on the mornings in Australia. People tuning in sort of on their lunch break over in the US. So it's great to see the fans sort of engaging with us in that capacity.
That's awesome, and I guess it goes to show you kind of sometimes we don't even realize what people are really showing up for. Sometimes we think we have to do kind of these extra little things that we think make it better, and maybe it does, but in reality, I think people are there they're there because maybe there's a connection with the host, or maybe there's a connection with the channel, or maybe they're just there because they want some info and some news. So you guys are still doing that. And additionally, you guys are also on the radio every match day now. How can people find that, and how are you finding that?
Yeah, so firstly, we've all got a face for radio anyway, so it's right up our street. So we're now on Voice FM, which is a local Southampton station, but you can tune in across the world on the TuneIn Radio app, so you can pick it up sort of on your holidays in the Seychelles if you wanted to. And perhaps if you want to pick it up in California, you can go to the TuneIn Radio app on 103.9 Voice FM. And so we chat about the previous game, our preview. For the next game, we'll talk about the verdicts, we talk about the latest news. We've resurrected the old infamous ins and outs, which was a regular sort of column, a couple of spreads on the old sort of fanzine pages where we used to take a tongue-in-cheek look at things in the latest week. So, for example, obviously, last week, out would have been sort of international racist, which is totally disgraceful. So that will always be out, unacceptable sort of behaviour. But also out that week as well was hair appointments, because Clive ducked out the show sort of last week to go home for an appointment at home for his barber. So we give each other a bit of stick, poke fun at things. So it's nothing to be taken too seriously.
Well, that sounds good. It sounds like that's what we should be doing. We should make sure we're enjoying it. We should try to, I don't know. I think that's what it's all about. So that all sounds pretty good. And we'll put links to all those things in the show notes. But I guess moving on a little bit towards yesterday's game, you made the trip, long trip, 2.5, 3 hours, right, on the train, and not a cheap one either.
No, not at all. So Wolverhampton, We managed to get our train sort of direct, but some people may have had to sort of divert off of sort of Banbury. But we had to split our tickets 4 times, and we managed to get our train travel about £36 with a rail card. I had a sort of a young kind of person's card. Some of our friends had a senior citizen's card, and others had network rail cards, which still gets you a bit of a discount. But basically, your route had to be split because it reduces the cost of the train travel, because UK companies or sort of providers for the train services, the longer you stay on a direct service, the more expensive it becomes. So if you hadn't had a rail card, you would have looked at about a train price of around 60 or £65, which is totally, extortionate.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. I think that's what it cost my entire family to go from London to Southampton one day, and that's because we bought it, I think, on the day of. So that sounds just absolutely awful. So hopefully, I guess the only good part of that is it got you there well before the BBC Radio Silent guys rolled up because of all of the traffic. Yeah,
we saw that. Sort of cheekily kind of interacted with the post, if you like, but they managed to turn up, didn't they? Just before the teams were emerging from the tunnels, and would have been a certainly different show if it were maybe sort of us on the live commentary, or perhaps sort of John from the Saints FC podcast, who also picked up met up with sort of at the ground as well. So good to see them. And I don't think we probably would have been allowed, because we're very much an uncensored opinion kind of commentary. So we would have got plenty of Ofcom complaints if we were on the BBC solo commentary.
Well, they would have just had to put a little bit more of a delay on there and go mute every once in a while. It would have been all right. And it could have been the big break. You never know. Well,
we'll keep chipping away. We'll keep doing our things, and I think that's probably the USP, if you like, the unique selling point of our kind of channels. We're unfiltered. Everybody can have an opinion from all walks of life, and we're trying not to be that sort of professional kind of commentary. We're just saying it how it is, saying it how we see it.
Absolutely, I think that's what I like about it. So that's good. But I don't know. You want to give me your unfiltered opinion on yesterday's lineup when you first saw it? What were your first kind of thoughts as you see the lineup that was Angus Gunn, Ian Valery, Jan Bednarak, Yannick Vestergaard, Maya Yoshida, Ryan Bertrand across the back line, then Romeu, Højbjerg, Prowse, and then Redmond and Ings. What did you make of that as you saw it?
5-3-2, wasn't it? Sort of on paper. 5 at the back once again. And I think I wasn't expecting Vestergaard to be in there as well, not for a recall, especially sort of at Wolves. I think we could have. I mean, had you asked me before the game, I would have taken a point. But as it played out, I think it was a fair result. But from the lineup, I think we should have started with Alex McCarthy. I think it's about time that he had a chance back in the starting 11. Ralph took Shea Adams away from the limelight or the spotlight. Maybe he rested him, or just taken away from the pressure of sort of playing in the first team. So I think perhaps Angus Gunn could have had some of that treatment. Alex McCarthy a little bit older, a little bit more sort of confident, composed, if you like. And I was surprised to see Angus in goal yesterday. Vestergaard, not sure he warranted a recall either, and I think probably took away kind of our attacking impetus because we sort of sacrificed that approach with an extra defender on the pitch yesterday.
Do you think it had anything to do with potentially just trying to match Wolves' formation at all and just trying to provide coverage? Or, I mean, you look at some of the guys we had on the bench, we could have had Adams out there, we could have had Buffal out there, or even Stuart Armstrong, who had a decent international break, even though he was a late call-up. I mean, there were a lot of other things he could have done, and it looked like a lot of people going into yesterday would have taken a point to begin with, no without any question. When people saw the lineup, there was a lot of people weren't, I don't think, overly happy with the selection and with the team. And I think we keep hoping for something different, but really it's a lot of the same players that we've seen over and over and over. Maybe they've all slightly improved, but it's still the same team. And I know a lot of people were also really upset with Gunn being there. They thought that McCarthy should have probably come in after some of the mistakes that Gunn has made, but it didn't happen. And I guess, would you say, just on the basis of the fact that we got out of there how we did, would you say that was fair?
I think as you kind of highlighted that, we've almost sort of tried to match Wolves' approach yesterday. They set up with a sort of 3-5-2, 5-3-2, which they have been recently. And that's partly down to perhaps why the game was a bit of a stalemate, to be honest. I think going forward we didn't have too much threat. I think we were quite ponderous in possession. We had the reluctancy to shoot with a sight on goal, and that's really what the boys need to be driven into them, because we're not taking our chance. And we're seeing almost as kind of the same kind of bad habits that are re-emerging with this set of players that were highlighted under sort of Pellegrino, Hughes for the last sort of 2-3 years, and for the most part it is the same team. So when I was speaking to somebody yesterday after the game, they made a fair comment, and it was sort of you can't polish a turd. It's the same kind of players that are making these same mistakes, and Ralph is a good manager, but I think we need some inspiration for the personnel on the pitch.
Yeah, it is essentially just the same guys, and you can only do so much with them. And as you said, the game, I don't know. It's hard to recall too many chances that we had, and it was, but I was also never really feeling like we were defensively solid. I thought, I guess if I was going to pick somebody out that I thought had a pretty good game, given what they were having to do defensively, I thought Bertrand was pretty good against Traore yesterday. And I thought that he did a pretty good job. But I guess if you were going to pick out one positive, would it be maybe the third kit's being displayed for the first time this season, or do we have to actually look for a player or some sort of performance or something in the game that was worth it to really discuss in detail?
I was hoping for us to really sort of have a barnstorming performance yesterday and create the headline "Knights in White Satin," as per the old sort of classic song. But it was very much a stalemate, and I think the positives you've got to pull out of it is Danny Ings once again on the score sheet, 4th game in a row, and probably our best defender so far this season has been video assistant referee.
There it is. That's what we were looking for there, and saved us, I think, twice yesterday, correct?
Yeah, 2 decisions for us, and I think it is the first time this season we've finally got a decision against us. So in that respect, we can take some confidence. We are top of the table in decisions sort of going for us, but it goes both ways. We will chant and we'll sing VAR when it goes for us, but equally people will shout and scream, holler, and say, look, it's ruining the game if it goes against us. So I think it's about time we've got some of this good karma, because we had plenty of it over the last sort of 2-3 years as decisions were going against us, quite obviously. Yeah,
and I mean, thinking about it, it's, I don't know. We've had a lot going for us, I think, and Carlink on the Athletic pointed that out in an article recently, and so I think it's those decisions are bound to kind of even out over the course of the season. So I can't be overly upset, and I think. We'll talk about the penalty decision in just a little bit, but let's go ahead and get to kind of the start of the match, I guess. And so early on in the game, when Valerie was booked very early, it was, I think, his 2nd or 3rd late tackle, and you could see he was just a little bit late and not quite up to it from the start. And so to get booked that early, it's always worrying when you have a defender do that. But like I said, Traore against Bertrand down our left-hand side, I was really concerned because Traore is just, he has all that pace and luckily not a lot else usually, but he is still a talented kind of footballer and somebody that's going to run at Bertrand, probably by Bertrand, especially if Bertrand's forward. Of course, you have, the absolute opposite sort of player in Vestergaard having to cover that space there for Traore, so that was always going to be worrying to me. But it was pretty open there for the first couple of minutes. For the first 15 minutes, I felt like it was kind of just counterattack versus counterattack, and neither team really doing anything with it, but a lot of running up and down the pitch.
Yeah, I think we were quite happy to hold that ball, build that possession up. But, we had no sort of impetus in that final third. We're quite happy to work it around the box. And as I said, sort of a couple of minutes ago, we were reluctant to take a shot on goal. But I think if you want to highlight Ryan Birch's performance yesterday, experienced kind of performance. You feel like nullifying Adama Traore, who scored obviously those two great goals at the Etihad 2-3 weeks ago now, and so kept in quite a good performance from him. But if we want to highlight Jan Valery, I've got to say, I think he is better going forward, and it's a worrying concern when he comes back because he's often clumsy, often a bit hot-headed. We've seen that sort of last season, flying into tackles, but equally he can pull out a magical piece of trickery, squirming his way through to the byline and put it back for Danny Ings for the Chelsea game, but. And also those sort of magical moments, smashing that ball home against Manchester United last season. So I think if we want to highlight his game in particular, I think he needs to work more on his defensive duties. And I think that's partly down to why some people are suggesting that Cedric is an all-round better player. Defensively, won championships with Portugal. I think defensively braver than Jan Valery. Not so much going forward. So they've both got strings to the bow, but I think all-round as a better player has got to be Cedric. But Valery, we don't expect him to be this already made sort of player. He's still got plenty of years ahead, and I'm sure, hopefully, and he will stay for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're mentioning the kind of lack of cutting edge going forward. And I think when you look at the formation, unless guys like Ward-Prowse or Højbjerg or Valery were going to get forward and provide some extra options in the box, then we were always going to be, it seemed like a lot of times it was Ings and maybe Redmond against 3 or 4 Wolves defenders, and that's never going to result in us having a good day in front of goal, unless, of course, you have substitute defenders passing the ball to Danny Ings. And it seemed like Højbjerg played a couple of nice passes, and Romeu played a couple people in as well yesterday, but the Wolves defense, I think, undid themselves a little bit a couple of times. But Wolves were forced into an early change. There was a leg injury to Bennett, no contact on it, so he has to come off, and I think that kind of upsets their rhythm a little bit, but I will take that. Ings also won a free kick shortly after that, but nothing from it, unfortunately. And I don't know if we were planning on ever getting anything from set pieces yesterday. I don't think that was going to be a thing for us. But I was a little bit disappointed yesterday with some of the deliveries that Ward-Prowse had. And everybody talks about the fact that he should be out there delivering those consistently, but it seems like in recent, at least on my memory, that he's been about average this season. I think there are people on other teams who can deliver a better ball more consistently than he can, even though every once in a while he gets it just right, and then it's a real pleasure to watch. Yeah,
that's a recurrent theme at the moment. Actually, Ward-Prowse isn't much. A lot of people have been commenting he doesn't offer much on the field apart from the set piece specialty, and it was quite frustrating again, sort of for the most part. Yesterday, I think it was the first time I've seen this season. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this was the first time yesterday the ball went past the first man on the clearance from the corner, which is so frustrating because we expect Ward-Prowse is this specialty kicker. If you want to look at sort of NFL analogies, and he can sort of come on and off for set pieces. So he makes himself look busy, gets up and around the pitch. But he's not offering too much going forward at the moment. Although he did that sort of last season, kicked on with a few goals from open play, and that was sort of his fear, not sort of a fear, but things sort of brought his play down. The last sort of 2-3 years, he wasn't scoring goals from open play, but he opened those accounts sort of last season. But we haven't seen him sort of really kick on again this season. If we've got Ward-Prowse making himself look busy but not doing much, and Højbjerg for all his work and effort, he's not great in the final third, and Romeu gets a nosebleed when he gets past the halfway line. So he collects the ball, pushes it on, passes it on quickly to the next man to move it forward. So I think we've got to try other options on Friday. Introduce Buffal either from the start or earlier on. I'm sure we'll get to substitutions and the lateness of those once again. And Armstrong as well, albeit a great goal against San Marino, who are bottom of the league in the FIFA rankings, but good goal nonetheless. Perhaps being watching Prowse's free kick DVD collection. But I think Armstrong, again, offers a bit more going forward. He can score some fantastic goals, shown it last season. Edge of the box, sort of great goals, great finishes. So we've got to try something different next week.
Yeah, I think, though, we talk about us not creating a lot of chances. We wound up with 14 shots compared to their 4. Not that they were all great. Not even all of them got anywhere near the goalkeeper or worried him at all. But I think you're right. I think if you look at some of the options we have, especially in midfield, it's tough to look around the team and think in the kind of style and formation that we're playing, who's going to come in. Because I don't think you can. I think you can maybe play if you play 3-4-3 or 4-3-3, then you can get some of those wide players. If you play the 4-2-2-2, I think you can have guys like you can have Redmond and Ings up top, or even Ings and Adams, and you can also have maybe then you can sacrifice James Ward-Prowse or somebody else in that midfield to get two guys like maybe Stuart Armstrong and Redmond, or maybe I guess maybe even Buffal and Armstrong behind them or something like that. I think you could potentially do that. behind the front too, depending on where Redmond goes. But it's still this kind of weird thing where I think we're trying to cover for our lack of kind of defensive solidity and trying to do it just with bodies out there that will, track back and play defense versus guys who want to stay forward and try to beat people on the dribble.
But I've got to highlight a couple of things as well. Actually, there's a constant fear amongst us supporters at the moment. Why is sort of Ralph persisting with playing players out of position? Once again, we saw yesterday, albeit sort of about 2 or 3 minutes before Dancer was introduced, we put Ward-Prowse at right back once again. He has no influence at all from that area of the pitch, and he's not a right wing back. Play him in a central position, get him higher up the pitch, but equally, he brings on Dancer, who is not a right back, who is not a right wing back. He looked vulnerable going up and down that side of the pitch. We've got to play him into their positions. We've said this 2-3 weeks on the row. We've got to play square pegs in square holes, round pegs, round holes. Play him in the natural positions, even if it means sacrificing the player that's been a servant for a good run of games or at least a few years. I think the defenders yesterday, I think were far too easily bamboozled by sort of Raul Jimenez or often some of the other creative additions for Wolverhampton. At 6s and 7s for some of the opportunities yesterday, especially the second disallowed goal. It's a worrying concern. I think that's ultimately not what is bringing us down. Is our defensive naivety, our defensive lack of bravery, and a defensive lack of leadership. Again, once again, it's been our vulnerability.
Yeah, before we move on to talk about the first disallowed goal, I'd like to point out Højbjerg had a pretty decent chance, did all of the kind of good work, getting the ball forward, laid the ball off to Ings. Ings got it back to him, and then you could tell he was trying to curl it into the far corner, and I don't know if it landed in the stadium or not, but it was well over what anything that was going to happen. That was a bit frustrating because I was hoping we were going to be able to put something away there. But moving on to the first kind of disallowed goal, once again, we have kind of it seemed like just one ball over the top, gun coming out, caught out, and Jimenez is in and kind of walks into the goal. And luckily, I guess, VAR says no goal and the handball and the buildup. And I don't know, man, I thought that was pretty harsh in terms of, does it hit his hand? Yes. I don't think the goal being called off was harsh. I thought him getting booked for it was harsh. But I'm not going to complain because it went for us. So, from your perspective, I don't know if that was going away from you or coming towards you, but what were your thoughts as that kind of goal unfolded?
Well, from my personal point of view, when that ball went into the back of the net, I immediately went downstairs, got into the restroom, kind of the men's, and then I hear over the announcement, goal disallowed. Oh, great. Okay, then we get a sort of reprise on this. But I think it's also worrying that every time Gunn comes off his line, you're holding your breath. It's a worrying concern to see that every time. We've seen him being caught out 2 or 3 times this season. And as you say, it's one ball over the top. It's Vestergaard that is, I guess, culpable a little bit here, but not wholly as culpable as the Burnley game at the very start of the season. But we've got away with it to some extent. It is a handball. It is by the letter of law. But just one ball over the top. That is a fragility.
Yeah, it seems something that would be so simple. Like most, League One, League Two teams, save one that I won't mention, seem to be able to deal with long balls over the top. You just head it back into the midfield or, do something like that. And we can't seem to figure that part of it out. And the communication between our goalkeeper and our backline, and that maybe it's a result of the backline constantly shifting and we've gone from a back four to a back three. We've shifted those center backs around more times than I would like, and maybe that's the communication issue that's there. But you still think that in training you have played football for long enough. You should have some idea who's doing what when the ball goes long, and we also have to be aware of that because that's what teams are going to do to us because we are a decent pressing side. A lot of these teams that we're going to play as we get to the people that are further down the table aren't going to be able to play through the press. And so that long ball over the top is going to be something that is going to be, we're going to have to learn how to deal with it. Otherwise, we're going to be in a world of hurt when we are coming up against teams that we should be beating, and we won't be able to simply because they'll have pumped a ball over the top, and our goalkeeper will punch our defender in the face, and then the other guy will walk it in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a worrying concern as well. I mean, at the end of the day, we all respect sort of Ralph's philosophy. He wants players sort of under the age of 24, but equally that is also fragility. As I say, again, kind of we're missing that leadership. We're missing that person to give responsibility, to make sure that responsibility is taken for a marker, is taken for a tackle, that bravery. If we were to say, let's have Danso, Bednarak and Gunn in goal, I think the average age of that back three there would be about, 21, 22 years old?
Yeah, something like that.
Gunn 22, Bednarak 22 himself, but Danso 20, 21. So, yeah, I mean, those are our three best defenders. Three best, let's say the two best central defenders. But equally, sometimes we see Yoshida in there and he doesn't offer too much of that leadership or in that capacity. He's one of the eldest kind of now in the squad, but we still haven't seen that leadership qualities kind of rule the roost, if you like. So we've missed a beat in the summer trying to attract an experienced central defender, and I think that should be something that we should explore in January. Otherwise, we could see ourselves in all kinds of trouble. And this is the thing. I think we need to sort of swallow our pride a little bit here, just to kind of accommodate this sort of transfer. We need an experienced defender, a leader at the back, a leader of men. We haven't had that sort of character in the camp since Jose Font, or sort of Van Dijk to some extent, before he started throwing his toys out the pram. So those are the types of characters and leaders we really need in our defence.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that getting saved by VAR, that I always hope that it's going to be some sort of impetus to kind of kick on. And we had a decent spell of possession kind of in the middle of the half. We didn't get anything from it. And we did have another chance kind of created. Redmond had the ball at his feet, did some wonderful work to get by a few players and get into space. But I think just held the ball too long. And I think just always that last, maybe it's not the last decision, but it's the decision right before that. We get that wrong too often. We can't make the right decision. We can't find that pass that's going to allow somebody to get a shot away. And we're just a little bit too hesitant, or maybe in Redmond's case, it's a little bit too much of, he feels like he has to do more of it himself because he was, that's what we want him to do. We want him to carry the ball, and guys are going to make mistakes going forward. And that's part of what you want your creative players to do, is to try things. And we're not always going to be happy with how it works out. But anyway, I mean, Bertrand winds up hitting the side netting, I think, at one point, and that was a decent chance. And I think we also, I think Ings may have lost it out for a goal kick at one point, and we were attacking a little bit better. And for all of our, being saved by VAR, not once but twice, and we'll get to the second one in a minute. But overall, I think the first half, I think we played a little bit better than they were. I think I wasn't overly disappointed with how the game was going, although I was conflicted about what I was seeing kind of on the pitch. So if we get to the second disallowed goal, I have written in my notes, because I was actually taking paper notes because I was a mess. So it says it just has written here, the absolute nightmare in front of goal, pulled apart too easily. Jimenez kind of gets by Bednarak way too easily. First shot is saved, but Gunn doesn't get it far enough away. I mean, I thought initially on the initial shot he did decent enough to get that ball out of to make the save, I guess. But looking back at it, it didn't get far enough away from the front of the goal. We're slow to the rebound, and that's one of those things. When the shot went, everybody kind of turned and looked and said, like, "Oh, I hope he saves it," and then nobody's there to Vestergaard reacts, but way too late. Ball winds up in the back of the net, and once again saved by VAR. And I didn't see that one coming. I thought that was it for us.
Well, I think in the build-up to that as well, both of the body shapes of the defenders, are probably all three of them, Vestergaard, Yoshida and Bednarak, they're in the opposite direction of the runner. If you look back on the replay, if you slow it down a little bit, Yoshida's body shape is totally all wrong here. Vestergaard is at 6s and 7s, don't know where he's coming or going, like the hokey. And then again, we're slow to react for the rebound. And, once again, let off by VAR, who I think we all should start having our VAR printed on the back of our replica shirts this season.
Maybe next time we do the lock screen at Southampton, they would do the lock screen, whatever, just put VAR and see how that works. I wonder if he'll do it.
VAR 19, I think, will be the bestseller in the club shop.
We should do that. I'm never awake when those things come out. I get up and everybody's already done. And So hopefully somebody will do it. And the guys that run the social media accounts tend to be pretty good sports. So hopefully they get on that and they'll do that. But I guess going into stoppage time in the first half, if we just a couple more chances, I think that's where Bertrand hit the side netting. Højbjerg had another chance, but he earned Cody a yellow card just from that pressing and having their defense kind of be fragile. And I don't know. I think this is one of those first times that I've seen you could see the weakness in the other team's defense as well. And despite the shape and despite the number of defenders, they were not 100% comfortable. And our team actually going forward and pressing those guys and forcing those mistakes, forcing them to make those passes and try to play out. That I think that worked to our advantage again. And it was just unfortunate that we didn't have anybody, or the shots that we created, the chances we created, weren't quite enough to be able to actually get us in the goal. But coming out for the second half, Ings, I think for the first time in the match, was kind of played in by Wolves. Not enough power in the shot, though. Great job to kind of get the shot away and be alert, but nothing to really trouble Patricio at all. But then in the 53rd minute, I think that's when we score.
Yeah, I mean, if you highlight the first opportunity, he will be kicking himself that he didn't use that chance properly. I think he even had time to take another touch, maybe take it round the defender and put it away. But fair play to him. Sort of worked himself hard into a good position. He gets the ball from Højbjerg, who intercepts it sort of in the final third. A terrible ball from Wolves, but we'll take it. Ings is quite smart here as well. He plays the run across volley. Who, if he contacts Ings, it's going down for a penalty. But you gotta applaud Danny Ings here. The composure. He takes a little glance up at the goalkeeper, sees where he's coming out, and just puts the ball away nice and neatly, coolly in the opposite corner. Fourth game in a row he's scored, and great work from the lad, and hopefully it still continues. And finally, it looks like we've got a goal scorer that is regularly going for us. And Danny Ings is really starting to become this sort of talismanic type of figure, and working himself hard. And I think it was for the first time in a while that he's actually finished 90 minutes yesterday.
That's not the norm for Ings. He normally comes off, and granted, it's been later and later with how long Ralph has held the substitutions in recent weeks. But I think, I don't know when we will stop worrying about Danny Ings' fitness and worry about him staying fit. Even though I think it's just when you have a history of injuries, that's what people are going to do, and it's what I'm going to worry about because I want him to be on the pitch. And if that means he's on the pitch for 75 minutes a match and he lasts all season versus 90 minutes a match for half the season, I think I'd take the 75 and be around all season. But you're right, it's 4 in a row. He has played well. He's done all of the kind of things, and it's his intelligence. And if you look at the goals that he scored, he hasn't. I wouldn't say any of them are super glorious, but there's all these little tiny things that he does just right that don't get picked up necessarily by the cameras, that lead to the goals. And I think that's what we're missing in guys like Che Adams, who can do all of the running and look really good on tape, because you're or on TV, I guess, because you look like you're trying hard and you're holding up the ball and you're running into the channel and all this stuff. And that's all stuff that we want, but it's just those little things that maybe go more unnoticed that Danny Ings seems to be really, really good at. And additionally, he got himself into really good shape. I think people have said it over and over, kind of over the summer. And I've said it before too. It's, he's down in LA doing this work, and guys like Redmond were out here in the past as well. And, they look like they are in really good shape, versus, maybe what they were in the past. And it's not, any sort of slight on what they were doing before, but I think just kind of developing all those little stabilizing muscles and things like that and getting them both mentally and physically ready for the season. So their bodies hold up, I think is wonderful. So, there we go. But once again, I just want to point out that's another mistake by, I think it was Vallejo who was there. And I think also Cody was there for, guilty for it as well. The ball should just be cleared. No problem at all. And, finally somebody else makes a mistake and we can capitalize on it. So there we go. I have written in my notes again, now that we're ahead, don't change the approach. Keep things the same. Keep pressing. That back line looks so vulnerable for so much of the match, and yet almost immediately we give away a penalty. And this is, as you mentioned before, one of the first times that VAR has gone maybe against us. What are your thoughts on it? Let me hear your thoughts, and then I'll kind of weigh in on as to what I was thinking as it was happening.
Okay, so before we get to the penalty, I think we have to give credit to Danny Ings' work rate off the ball. He's a very intelligent player. Drops deep, works himself into the ground, and as you say, he's worked hard in the summer to make sure he has a consistent fitness. And I think a key word I also picked up there just a moment ago, he's doing these tiny little things. And I think that is really what he is fed off at the moment, tiny sort of scraps. And if he's scoring goals from these positions, from scraps, just imagine what he can score with actual chances, with a playmaker, bringing the ball back into him and scoring goals and bouncing ideas off him as well. So credit to Danny Ings, scoring 4 goals in a row, and mostly what have been scraps. Right, penalty. Second half, yeah. I mean, the lead didn't last long, did it? Was it about 8 minutes, 7 minutes? Clumsy defending once again. There were 2 opportunities to clear the ball. And at first, I'll tell you what, I argued with Nick in the pub after the game yesterday. It was a penalty, is what I argued. And then I sort of took a look at it again this morning after a couple more replays, and the close-up sort of reverse camera angle does suggest that Doherty really swings his leg around the back of Højbjerg to try and find the foul. Very surprised that Doherty didn't try it earlier on whilst Yoshida was on the floor. Sort of Højbjerg tries to track him across, but how can we allow an attacker to get that so far up the box into almost what is the 6-yard line to try and pull it across? So we've got to take more responsibility of it, and clumsy, I guess, at the end of the day. But Doherty here is definitely guilty of watching some divers that you would see going straight into the swimming pool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Summer Olympics, are they coming up soon? I'm not sure, but maybe we'll get him on the team.
Ireland's diving team will be good next year.
There you go. I would say though that he had a lot of chances to go down. And I think that's what I tweeted is he had a number of chances to potentially find contact and go down, and I think he was looking for it. And I would say it is a penalty. I think there is a little bit of contact there. And the angle that the referee has, I think if you look at bodies flying in there trying to get to the ball, you see the guy go down, you're probably going to give it. And I think if he doesn't give it, then it's not going to be overturned and given as a penalty. I think that's one of those instances where VAR is just, there's not enough evidence there to overturn it. And I think it got worse as you slowed it down. I think once they went to the replay, the more times they showed it in slow motion, the more times I thought it was a penalty. Whereas at first glance and in the run of play, it looked like he just went down too easily. But and I think that's one of those things where it's not going to be a perfect system. I think VAR is going to uphold that. And then Jimenez puts the penalty away, almost to the point I thought he stopped in the run up, and I thought it was gonna, hopefully we'll get lucky there. But I guess you can't win them all that way.
Yeah, gun goes the right way, doesn't he? But it almost looks like he's been watching a bit of Fraser Forster's highlight reel going down a bit in slow motion, But Jimenez, I think he probably wanted to get that marquee off his back, denied twice earlier in the game, and I think it is a fair result at the end of the day, 1-1. I think there weren't too many clinical opportunities to really sort of extend the lead, and point in the road will stop the rot. And Wolves is always a sort of tough place to go on the back of their 2 great wins, sort of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I think all of us would have taken a point to begin with, and especially I think they had come back late on in games recently. I think against City and maybe Palace. I could be wrong in saying that, but the fact that they haven't had the best of seasons. Granted, they've been dealing with the Europa League as well, but I think we can be pretty happy with the point overall. Even if we didn't get the formation we wanted, we didn't get the personnel we wanted, we didn't necessarily play defensively stellarly. Our goalkeeper made a couple of errors again, and so you have all of these things that kind of add up. But at the end of the day, we got out of there with a point, and that's what we need. Points are important. Points are valuable. Point on the road in the Premier League is nothing to kind of sneeze at. Although we've been much better on the road than we have at home.
Yeah, what is it? Sort of about 10 points now, 9 points on the road, and we are playing without pressure away from home. I have to say, yesterday Wolves away sort of section. There were pockets of vocal supports, but it's difficult to because of the position of where we were in the ground. We're all in the sort of lower sort of deck, if you know, a lower tier, which stretched all across the edge of the pitch. So it was quite difficult to get songs going. Often we're behind goals, and actually I think all 19 other Premier League rounds we are, even in the corner, we're all together in one kind of capacity behind the goal, etc. But this is a difficult away end because if I was sat sort of along the centre line and I could hear sort of pockets of support trying to get a song going on the far side, on my right hand side, on your left on the TV screen, and then equally I could sort of hear sort of people trying to start chants on the far right, sort of far left of me and right on your TV set. So difficult to, and it was quite funny though because whatever a group of supporters were trying to sing on my left or right, there was a chap in front of me that had no idea. He was trying to sing his own songs in the wrong tone and rhythm and wrong pace, and it was totally all over the place. So, difficult away end, difficult to get some unity and some all together songs. I think maybe only twice the whole sort of section broke out with When the Saints. And so a point on the road, Wolverhampton, not the greatest of away ends, but we can't really grumble too much, to be honest, which is a strange one, if you like, because we've had plenty to grumble over the last sort of 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned the fan base being a little bit not quite on the same page. I think that's indicative of us on social media and elsewhere. It seems like we are constantly arguing with one another, and there's a difference between having a different opinion and expressing that different opinion and just arguing with people for the sake of trying to get your point across or trying to bring other people down. It's a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, I think that's what's going to happen, especially when people are getting frustrated. And we should be able to criticize the play of the team, the manager, those things. That's the way it is, but sometimes people just don't quite approach it the right way, maybe for everybody, and you're not going to make everybody happy with what you say. I'm sure, as you and I both know, having done this sort of stuff before, I'm sure that'll happen today. Anyway, I have in my notes that after the 75th minute, when Buffal came in for Valerie, that I didn't write anything down for 10 minutes. So I wrote that I haven't written anything down. I was struggling to find some sort of note to put in there. Nothing there, but I think as the game wound down, I can't remember us being super troubled. I also can't remember us really creating a clear kind of opportunity to potentially win the match. And I guess we can talk about the substitutions there. I mean, the first sub, I think we only used 2 yesterday, unless I'm not able to read a computer screen, which the fog is wearing off, so I think I'm all right. But I mean, 2 substitutions, one in the 75th, one in the 81st. We bring on a defender for Romeu after we pull off Valerie for Buffon. And that meant that James Ward-Prowse shifted back a little bit to right wing back for a minute. But I mean, do you have issues with the substitutions that were there, given kind of what the game looked like, and were we maybe a little bit hesitant to go try to win it with that second substitution, or do you think that was the right approach from Ralph?
Yeah, again, questions, confusion around the stance. Once again, sort of replacing a defender for an attacker, for a midfielder to go to defence. It's all over the place. It's a bit like the old sort of Twister board game. You got right, left, pink, left foot green. It's all over the place at the moment. And when Dancer replaced Romeu, we thought, okay, so Oriol's been given the protection. I thought I've got to highlight his support again yesterday. Oriol, Romeu sort of doing the dirty work, busy in midfield, and I don't think sort of Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg will be able to offer that much sort of protection as much as Oriol. So we thought Dancer might even want to slip in at centre midfield, sort of alongside Højbjerg, try that position, but he goes over to right back. He's not that position. He's a tall, strapping lad, strong, play him at centre-back. So I think we finished at the end of the game yesterday with 4 centre-backs and a couple of players out of position. And, I guess the most thing people are grumbling about, once again, is the late substitutions. By the time we made our first, Wolves had made all 3, partly down to circumstances and 2 injuries they picked up in the first half. But they looked a bit more organised, sort of being a bit more proactive. And this is the thing that sort of we all sort of grumbled and moaned about, complained about Mark Hughes' late substitutions. We sort of saw him as a reactive manager rather than a proactive manager. We all trust Ralph, but I think we've got to see more of that kind of risk sort of highlighted, changing the shape more often, because I think he settled quite well with a 5 at the back yesterday. And I think it's a game of kind of battleships, if you like. I don't know, sort of a strategic kind of thing. If he took one player off at defence, we might have exposed ourselves to something else. But it was very much a stalemate. And I think both, as you say, both clubs, neither kind of threatened in that second half. But I think Ings isolated a little bit up top. Redmond didn't offer too much at all. Very quiet game for him yesterday. And I think when we go to the game on Friday with Leicester, I think Leicester have got all the sort of capacity to come down here and take a victory, which is quite concerning, because we could get all the way to November without a home win.
Yeah, we'll just have to watch, whatever. Maybe we can create a fake Instagram account with some potential tactical changes, and then we'll see if they get leaked to the Sun before the game on Friday. I'm a little bit worried about that match. Jamie Vardy always worries me, going back to Remember, I think he's the guy who really put Van Dijk out for a while. That really kind of hurt us going down the stretch that season. A little kick to the Achilles there, a little step. But I am worried. You think about Leicester City and the kind of football they played when they won the Premier League. It was a lot of long balls over the top. It was a lot of Jamie Vardy running into the channel. And when you think about the things that we really struggle with, I mean, here we go. This could be a nightmare. But I'm hoping we're a little bit better than that going there. I do want to ask one more thing before we get to I have a couple listener questions, not a ton. It kept coming up yesterday on the commentary. 31 points dropped from winning positions since the start of 2018, 2019. I think it's somewhere in that range, and that's a lot. But this season, I mean, is that fair to bring up, or is it just that's the easy commentator statistic to bring up? And is that fair to levy on the team this season, given our results and how we played?
No, 9 games played, 1 game lost from a winning position. That's 2 points dropped. I think most teams have probably dropped that in the league so far this season. Yeah, it was starting to get concerning when we do start to drop more than sort of 20 points. But I think we can only judge the season after sort of 10 or 15 games as the league is starting to create a bit of a formation. And I think, we're partly let down by some of our performances. And I think it is a bit, it's historical context. I think we've got to judge our results on this season, put to bed last season's results and inabilities. And then we've got to start living for the future, stop looking at the past, a bit like that club down the road who keep telling us that we've won this, we've won that. So put it behind you, look forward.
You know what they didn't win yesterday or Saturday was their game.
Which was great.
Fantastic. If you were disappointed at all with our result, that should have just made you smile in and of itself, but there we go. I did want to say, Bertrand was booked late on. And you were mentioning Twister earlier, and I think Bertrand went 2 feet yellow, and I was a little surprised it wasn't 2 feet red. Thought it could have been much worse. It was a little bit high, but he gets a yellow. Whatever, they didn't score. We move on. We go out with a point. Like I said before, I think that's totally fine. Not the greatest of matches. And this is probably one of those matches that I hate to talk about the most, because there's no obvious real talking point other than, VAR, the mistake. And like, do you want to talk about that for an hour? Do you want to listen to that for an hour? I don't know. But it always worries me that we're going to miss something. But I think we covered the main points, right?
I think so. I think, it was a game sort of largely without incident, apart from the VAR decisions. But I think tactically, a game largely without sort of headlines, if you like. I think most of it will be dominated by the VAR decisions again for us. So we've got to try and get this VAR lads on a permanent deal in January.
Yeah. Get him in.
Seems like he's on loan so far.
Yeah, and it'll be he's definitely under the 24 year age limit, although he hasn't come through our academy. Hopefully we'll work him into the first team relatively quickly, and he won't make any mistakes in the back line. So that's good. A couple of questions from listeners here. The In That Number podcast, who are at Numbers Podcast, you've been on the show. I think, are you currently winning the quiz, or did somebody overtake you in recent weeks?
I think top of Matt Le Quiz, which is one of their features on their show.
Yeah. I have to admit, they told me, hey, we're gonna roll out the quiz with you, and I was like, cool, I will be top of the leaderboard, for at least once. But I was listening to some of the questions in the weeks after that, and I would have been so close to the bottom on a lot of those. I think they went easy on me, so I appreciate that, guys. So anyway, their question here is easy one, right? What's our best formation? And then a nice emoji going after that with the tongue sticking out. So, I think best, it really depends. I think like we talked about earlier, the guys that we have, the players that are in the squad, there's only so much you can do. And if you try the 4-2-2-2 and it doesn't quite work, and you try the 4-3-3 and it looks good against a League One side and not against a Premier League side, then you have to go back to something else. And we have the 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, whatever one of those positions it is. But it seems like 3 at the back is going to be a part of our lives for the foreseeable future until we get really 2 standout center backs that are there. And I would argue that one of the guys that's been our most consistent center back and earned all of the starts under Ralph has been Benderak, and he's got a couple of errors leading to goals this season. He he got into somebody's, biggest flop of the season ranking on Twitter, and that's just absolute garbage. It's just solely looking at errors leading to goals, I think, is how that came up with. But I mean, I think it's going to wind up being some sort of 3 at the back system, even though it's not my favorite. I think that's what we're going to wind up playing kind of going forward.
Yeah, I think we're compensating something here. If we're playing 3 central defenders that still don't know what they're doing, perhaps 3 heads will make 1, if you like. But I think Bednarak, a great sort of performer last season, but he was statistically the worst performing defender in the Premier League up until sort of this game week. 3 errors leading to goals. But again, a bit like Danso, a bit like Valerie, young lads, still a long way to go. So we've got to give them a bit of time, a bit of freedom to kind of make those mistakes, make sure they don't happen again. Formation, difficult one. Ralph was so desperate to play this 4-2-2-2 sort of formation, but we've rarely seen much of it, and I think it's partly down to trying to figure out what the other opposition is playing. And we've seen them play this 4-3-3, and historically we've had a lot of success with that. Whether you see it as a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. Which is what we sort of used on the march to Europe and the preceding sort of season. So I think if the way that I look at it, as I say, we've got to play square pegs in square holes. We've got plenty of options now in most areas. We've got an abundance of attacking threats, and we're just struggling to kind of fit them all in. I think if you've got to look at it right now, I would play a sort of a 4-3-3 with a goalkeeper of Alex McCarthy, a chance for him to kind of return to the team, right back but let's say that all our defenders and all our players are fit. I think it mostly picks itself. Cedric, Bednarak, Danso, Bertrand. 2 midfielders in Højbjerg and Romeu. Midfield attacking trio of Redmond. Might be a bit of an unpopular opinion here, but Boufal and Gineppo, and then Ings up front. What a sort of attacking threat that could be.
Oh yeah, that's a lot going there. It's also not a lot of holding up the ball or maybe dropping deep to help out. But I'd argue you could potentially keep those guys all in there like that. I think that's totally fine if everybody's healthy. You could also slip Armstrong in there if you're going to play a 4-2-3-1. You can play him in the kind of that 10 role. I think that would be okay too. Although he's not nearly as dynamic as some of those other guys. So I think Redmond and Boufal in the lineup together, that's dangerous. I think Gineppo, hopefully he comes back healthy soon. It's always worrying with the muscle injury. You never know what it's going to be there. And Ralph has mentioned he feels fine up until he shoots, and then when he shoots, it hurts, and that's not great. So because we want him to shoot, because that's something we need if we're going to score any goals. So there we go. Another one here from St. Kevin, who's at Moscow Mush. It was actually one of the guys from the In That Number podcast, although I'm pretty sure it's different people asking the questions based on the timestamp here. Says, why aren't we seeing any youngsters in the first team this season? And that was one of those things last season where it seemed like when Ralph came in, he really shook the team up a little bit. He was testing guys almost, saying, Cedric, you've had this kind of maybe an attitude issue or something else, but off you go. We'll put Valerie in. We have no problem with that. And I think to Cedric's credit, he's responded the right way to that. He's come back now and is ready and fighting for his spot. And injury aside, I think he would have been in the team yesterday. But other than that, we haven't seen anybody really cycle through. And granted, Danzo is young and we bought him, but we bought him as a first team player. We didn't buy him as an academy product to bring him through. Adam, same thing. He was bought to be a first team player. So is it concerning to you, I guess, at all that we haven't had anybody from the under 23 squad come up and really make an impact?
Well, he had plenty of opportunities, didn't he? He was trying to find his feet when he took the reins, Ralph, back in December. Gave opportunities to Slattery, Valerie, albeit Valerie had just broke into the first team the week before against Man United under Mark Hughes. And we've seen sort of Ramsey, we saw Nlondulu sort of make appearances as well. So they seem to be sort of performing well for the under 23. So I think we're waiting just for a right opportunity to throw him in there and almost sort of throw a bit of a curveball at the opposition. We've seen Josh Sims become that character sometimes. Was playing the last time we played Wolves and since now been shipped out to New York, which is sort of sad to see because Josh Sims offers that dynamic sort of directness, at the defenders, and I think it's only a matter of time. But I think we've still got a bit of a bloated squad. at the moment. You know, I think it was a bit of a fresh start for most people. We've seen Buffal return, Cedric return in the summer. So perhaps it is limiting their first team opportunities for the youngsters now.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be hard for guys to get into the team, especially without some sort of injury. I think that's usually where it comes from. It's I think if you saw an injury and you have a player that can slot into that spot, or maybe you can change the formation as a result and you bring somebody in, I think that's when it happens. But as you said, the squad is big. We don't have that many matches to play at the moment. We're not kind of impacted, so the rotation necessarily isn't there. So I think that's at least part of the reason. And I don't think it's that Ruff doesn't trust the youth or doesn't find them to be valuable. But I think right now, I think it's just the fixtures we have and the size of the squad that we have a lot of first team players that are fighting to get into the matchday squad that aren't. And I'm sometimes in danger of forgetting about them if they're not there for a couple of weeks.
But I want to highlight actually sort of Ruff's approach to this sort of thing. He gives sort of opportunities to players when someone is suspended or injured, but then they then sort of become first teamers until they get suspended or they get injured, and then the next person sort of replaces him. So it's a bit of a sort of a revolving door sort of system.
I mean, I think that if somebody came in and put their stamp on it and just said, like, took the game by the horns and played just, you know, I'm not talking like a 6.5 out of 10 performance twice. I'm talking like 7.5, 8, and that's hard to do. But if they came in and did that as a young player and then got an injury or got suspended, I think they would be brought back in. But I think if you come in and you're putting in 6s like everybody else, you know, what's the reason that Ralph's going to pick you? You know, you have to kind of earn that spot and take that chance. And it's harsh, but that's the way that it works for all of these guys. They've all had breaks like that where they've been given a chance and they've been able to impress enough to get to where they're at now. So they're going to have to do that, I think, to get out of that youth squad and into the first team. Otherwise, they'll be, coming in here and there, and other than that, playing on a lot of Friday nights, I guess.
Yeah, I think we've got plenty of options now, but whether it is an extension of sort of quality, whether we have enough quality to fill in those gaps, and whether we've not got enough sort of star quality to turn the game on its head and sort of have game changers in Gineppo and sort of Buffal. So is the quality there in the youngsters at the moment? I wouldn't say so, because we're still trying to compensate for the errors that we made almost 10 years ago. And we were invited to a couple of evenings down at Staplewood where the academy director spoke about their approach and their recruitment, if you like. And often it is a 10-year process. So they would recruit these youngsters at the age of sort of, 8 or 9, 10 years old, and then sort of develop them into sort of first teamers. So the prime example would be sort of at the moment would be Callum Slattery, or even sort of James Ward-Prowse, who had been with the squad since he was about 7 or 8 years old. And we're compensating because obviously we fell into administration in about 2009-10. We couldn't obviously recruit these youngsters. That's why we're now seeing sort of a recruitment of players that are from other academies,
right,
from overseas, such as Jan Valery, who signed sort of about a year or two ago for just about £50,000, and now is a first teamer worth probably 100 times that value or 1,000 times that value. So we're still atoning for errors made for 10 years ago. So give us another 5 or 6 years. That's how long the cycle works, and we'll have some sort of star quality emerge through the academy once again.
Yeah, I think it will all come good at some point. And one last question here, and maybe we should. I don't know if we have time to discuss Ross Wilson, his departure, but we have one more question here from St. Mary's Pirate, who you know quite well, at Pirate_ST. He says, "Why am I more interested in the Bundesliga?" And I would say, I don't know. Maybe cheaper tickets, cheaper beer, louder fans. Just different rules in terms of what the fans are allowed to do, and the fact that maybe it's just something a little bit new, and you got guys flying in with karate kick tackles all over the place. So I think that might be it.
Yeah, it's a different atmosphere, isn't it, over in Germany? A different culture. It's illegal to watch. It's illegal to drink in the view of the pitch in the UK, and partly that might be down to why there's such a great atmosphere in German football.
Yeah, we need more. I don't know. Do you need more flares? You need more tifo banners or whatever they're called. I mean, those things I don't tend to see those as often in England as I do watching any other league. It seems like even in America when they try, people laugh. But it seems like in Germany and in Italy and other places, you get a lot of those things that are I guess just part of the game and kind of they're every week kind of things. In England, it seems that we don't have that as much. But I don't know what that's down to or why that is. I'm no expert on the history of those things, so I won't pretend to be.
Yeah, I think the Saints' Voice have also been trying to generate a conversation about how we can generate atmosphere in the ground at the moment. We've painted the back walls red and white, and they were asking about sort of scarves, banners, just to introduce a bit of identity in the football ground at the moment. I think we've lost a little bit of that over the years, and we're slowly sort of trying to introduce these sort of things to the stadium at the moment.
Well, I think sometimes if you build a generic stadium, you tend to get generic atmosphere, and there's not much you can do about it. And maybe that's part of it. I think you hear a lot of people who were able to go to the Dell talk about how horrible it was, but also that maybe the atmosphere was a bit better. But I don't know. That's arguable, and I'll let people debate that were there, because obviously I was not. Well, Freddie, I think that'll do it for today. But thank you so much for coming on, putting up with the the stuffiness it is. I mean, I think last time you were on, maybe it was like that as well. But hopefully we'll get over there soon, and we'll be able to do another live one, and enjoy some beer together, and hopefully not a 3-0 loss to West Ham away. But I want to thank you again. If people want to follow you and they don't already, I don't know why they wouldn't. You are at The Ugly Inside on Twitter and at The Ugly Inside 1988 on Instagram. Links to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the YouTube channel, everything in the show notes for everybody who's interested. And Freddie, thanks again for doing this. I always appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to be here. Maybe we better start a crowdfunding so we can get you over here more often. Thanks for having me once again.
We'll figure it out. It's just I start to look at tickets, and then I go like, I could do, my daughter's like, can we do this instead? And I'm like, yes, we can. Apparently she wants to go to school and also learn stuff and play sports. So I have to do that first, but I'll be over there hopefully sooner rather than later, but we'll figure it out. Maybe I'll wait till we start bringing through some youth team players, and then I'll come see them.
Great stuff. Yeah. Look forward to it, mate.
All right, man. Thank you, Freddie.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I want to apologize again about my voice, the sound of it. It's irritating. It irritates you. I apologize. Maybe this isn't the show for you, but if it's just the sickness that irritates you, try again next week. Hopefully, I'm better by then. But special thanks to Freddie for holding it all together. If you want to get more from him, you can do that by following along on Twitter and Instagram. They are at The Ugly Inside on Twitter, at The Ugly Inside 1988 on Instagram. If you want more than that, you can get Saints on Saturday with The Ugly Inside on 103.9 Voice FM in the Southampton area. And if you're outside the area like me, you can still get that by going to the link in the show notes where you can listen live to voicefmradio.co.uk. That will be that. So for you. So get in touch with The Ugly Inside. Well worth it as usual. There are a number of ways to get in touch with this show as well. You can go to southamptondelivery.com for links to the various audio platforms in case you have not subscribed yet, so you don't miss future episodes. You can also get in touch on social media. We're at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram, and at facebook.com/SFCDelivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. I do have some special thanks to those of you who sent in questions. I appreciate it. Please do that more. We always enjoy being able to answer your questions. We get to as many as we can. Thank you to the partners of the show. The logo is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram, and to Jay of the Southampton page. That's where you should go for all your Southampton FC news and needs. And he announced earlier this week that this will be his last season running the page. So Jay's been my partner for so long in this podcast journey that it is sad to see him go, but it's good for him to move on. So we have one more season. We'll finish strong, and I can't wait to see what he does next. If you like the music for the show, it comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to now, that might actually be over, His Aim is True by Poddington Bear. Lastly, thank you again for listening. Thank you to the patrons of the show who keep this thing going. If you are interested in becoming a patron, head on over to patreon.com/SFC Delivery, and you too can check out what's going on over there. But for now, that does it. We'll be back next week after the Leicester game. Hopefully, it all goes well, but we will see. So home form, not the greatest since the start of the season or dating back a couple of seasons now. But anyway, till then, remember that together, we march on.
That's my boss. He's going to be mad.